What is up, guys? It's your boy GRC. We're coming at you live every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. My co-host Sam Stolt, and today we're going to be talking about. There's some indicators, guys. There's some indicators. We've been in a bear run for a long time. I don't care what anyone says. It's been about a year and a half, and we've been through all of those classic psychology of a market bubble stages. You know, everyone getting stressed out, everyone freaking out, disbelief, the whole thing. So we're going to ask Sam where he thinks we're at in the psychology of a market cycle. And the truth is, guys, there could be a little bit more pain coming, but our time is, the window is closing. And that's for sure. And we all saw the 0.25 hike, which is a bit of a reversal from where we're at. Is that the trend that we're moving forward towards? I think it might be. I think 2023 is going to be bullish. I think, and no, he didn't turn me bullish for today. I'm not bullish this week. I'm not bullish this month. But everyone who's stuck here through this bear market and studied every single day, you are going to see some fruits, I believe. But just keep paying attention and keep being sharp. Keep making sure you're making money. Keep making sure you're working on your goals. Keep making sure you're keeping your side of the street clean. There's always going to be people telling you all sorts of things. Stay calm and focus on your side of the street. And we're going to listen to a little Ray Dalio today. We're going to be talking about the bull run, the market cycles. We're going to be just talking, guys. I hope everyone's having an amazing day. Are you ready for... Get ready for gains. My artwork's getting better at a minimum. Anyway, guys, Crypto in the Mornings live every single day. I hope you guys enjoyed the ICOSA yield and the pumps. I had some spare ICOSA that I didn't stake. I thought I staked it, but I actually didn't stake it. What did it go up? Like 55% since I bought at 33 cents? My God, it was at 76 cents. I was like, holy shit. And then I remembered us going through Wattses, Hedrons, ICOSA. Think about all the yield in the future. If you were watching this channel, you have 10x bonuses off your hex stakes. You have Wattses in the bag. And you understand ICOSA and the yield that it produces. And I'm super excited about that ecosystem. I'm really trying to get Alex on. So if any of you guys are friends with him, make sure you hit him up and say, the gym rat wants you. Shh. Anyway, Crypto in the Morning, every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. Let's get it!
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Smoking no blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Gym ready set me to show you the way.
D5 Pro. Yeah.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
So the Fed upped the rate yesterday by a half a point, right, from 4 and whatever it was to half a point higher than that. And I'm like thinking about the data that they're looking at, and every time I think about it, I just think of like you talking to your dad or your grandma about something, and they have an opinion about what is going on. But the data they're using is like watching mainstream media. So it's idiotic. Now they have access to more data, and I'm not saying that they're completely idiotic. But I have a feeling that the system is so broken at this moment that the data that the Fed is using is just not an accurate representation to make intelligent decisions off of. I just don't. I don't get that feeling. I could be 100% wrong.
I don't have enough information, but every time that I've really dove into those things, the numbers seem like absolute nonsense. I mean, consumer spending's up 3%. Consumer spending, I can't even buy chicken drums anymore. Like, I mean, I'm alive too, guys. Like, I actually have to eat and buy things and like get gas. And what do I notice? I have roommates that have, tenants that have full-time jobs and shit, and they're slowing, like less driving, less moving around, switching the gym up to the YMCA. And these are just things I've noticed, like just noticing from being around. I went to the grocery store 2 days ago, mind blown about the prices. I mean, I'm buying chicken for the same price I was buying perfectly amazing steaks. That's insane. And I'm just from the price, but like, think about it. It seems like at some point, the average human will not be able to bear this anymore. Like guys with no overhead, maybe a little different. But Sam, where do you see just from being around town, seeing all the people from where you're at, what are you noticing with just the sentiment from what people are doing at the moment?
I go back to the piece that the Fed is using the inaccurate information, because if you look at what people's actual behavior is doing, right? There's almost, I don't know of anybody who's either not running their own business really or doing, some type of side hustle in addition to a W-2 job. I don't know a lot of, maybe the people that I talk to obviously are going to be people that if you're doing the boring old thing, like I just won't talk to you. So obviously it's biased data, but I don't see that being captured in the data that is being used to make decisions on. If I was like, you need to make a decision on investing into XYZ, and I just said, hey, here's the unemployment number, and here's consumer spending, and here's consumer confidence, right? And you needed to make an investment into a specific thing. Like that just seems like a foolish way of doing that. And that's how I think things are going right now, because the data is so effed up and not representative of what reality is, like what the average person is going through. And I just think there's a giant disconnect there from the average person is not doing these things. A lot of the average people are like, eggs are $5 a get.
Dude, eggs are. I never thought I would worry about buying eggs in my life, ever. I was like, dude, are you 24 eggs is like $3, dude? That's all day long. And now it's like $9.
I spend over 20. I spend like $20 a week on eggs because I go through somewhere between 3 to 5 dozen eggs a week because I eat a lot of eggs.
I do too. I'm about 6 a day.
And and not that like it is what it is. Like I'm fine. However, I know a lot of people are not fine and they're going through and struggling with this kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of people. There's more people getting laid off at different jobs. I just saw something this morning, a headline. One of the large companies is using AI to write sales emails for their salespeople, right? How many jobs were they able to get rid of in terms of cost savings through this process? Who knows? But as we continue each new day, a new company, like whether it's one of my companies or somebody else's company, is going to figure out new tools that are represented in AI that are going to have to displace people, right? Well, in my case, like I'm adding people on because I need more help or whatever. But like large companies are going to be going through this process, and I'm very bullish on crypto for this year. I just don't see it being another down year. It seems very, very, very unlikely.
David with the 12 eggs per day, my goat. Remember when they said eggs would kill you back in the day? Dude, I remember hearing that. And when you're young, you listen to that stuff because you don't know what you're not supposed to listen to. And I was like, oh, I don't want my heart to fail. And dude, that is the most furthest from the truth. Dude, the trends, guys, make sure you're staying really alert and following guys that you know are doing things for your best interest. it's super important. You can really get on the wrong track super easily because eggs are a lifesaver. Like for real.
So that's on a tangent, but I think that like oxygen is like when you have something that's dead inside your body, like say your liver, your kidneys. This is a tangent. I apologize. What do they have to do? They have to remove it because there's a lack of oxygen. So that tissue is dead. If your arm is dead, that means there's a lack of oxygen in there. So something that I've been researching, on the fitness side of things and other stuff that I do is things like red light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And there's this peptide that actually increases the energy in your body. I'm very bullish on all this stuff because I think that over this next couple years, as other people start to catch on to I tend to be way ahead of the curve on this kind of stuff. And so as other people catch on to how important oxygenating your body is, for the lack of a better term, with red light therapy actually penetrates through your skin and helps with your mitochondria, which is where energy is produced, right? Which then allows you to do all sorts of stuff. The hyperbaric oxygen chamber also increases oxygen into your body. If you're trying to like heal something, right? Say in your elbow with BPC 157, which is a peptide for healing, you do an injection. That injection helps to bring blood flow to the area. What does that mean? It's bringing oxygen to the area that's injured, right? And all of these things are like, I'm very excited. There's a peptide MOTS-C, which also affects your mitochondria at increasing energy production. And like you can actually increase performance and other things. But imagine increasing performance without actually changing your hormones, without negatively impacting some other aspect of things in your body. I don't know how I got onto this tangent, but I think it's going to be the most decade that we've ever seen. Like this is going to be such an incredible decade. There's going to be so much change. So certain people are going to get hurt, and focus on moving forwards. We have amazing stuff that's happening in the healthcare industry because of all the bad stuff that has happened. Amazing stuff that's happened in the health industry, like related to peptides, related to stem cells, related to some of the things that I just mentioned that are going to transform people's lives. We have awesome stuff that's happening in the financial industry, right? Crypto is taking over, will take over this decade, right? We have the transition, which I'm not sure how this is going to play out exactly, but the transition from EVs to ICE engine vehicles. Some people could say that's bad. Some people could say that's good, but that is happening. All of this stuff. And then you layer on top of that AI on top of every single thing. Holy F, this is going to be absolutely insane.
One of the channels that changed my life, I don't know if it was this exact channel because Sam has lots of channels, but is this the one that you primarily use?
Yeah, the other one got deleted. Yeah.
So guys, if you're into this, we talk about crypto a lot of the time, but there's a lot of guys in this industry that frankly eat poorly, have horrible diets, really don't do anything right in their lives other than study whatever they're studying. And if this is this channel changed my life. I don't know if it was this channel exactly, but it was one of his channels. Real detail about real innovative things. Sam is generally the first or second dude on the planet to cover most things. I'm not even joking about that. Like he doesn't miss basically anything. And I was actually going through a lot of these videos yesterday. I really like this guy and this guy. I like all the guys that you bring on. They're so smart and they know so many things. So guys, if you're into pharmacology, all of these things, please subscribe to this channel. You have a lifetime of information that is free on the internet that you can go to for any needs, whether that's just eating right, whether that's just working out right. And generally for the pharma nuts and the detail nuts, that's where Sam kind of does his main thing because he also has a brand, the Triggered brand. And that's where he sells all these supplements. And I'm not really shilling it, but I don't think I've ever really showed everyone but now we're showing. So anyway, we'll talk about it. But anyway, guys, I wanted so many people tagged me in this video and I have not watched it. And this is Ray Dalio at the brink of economic war with China. And then we're going to watch another Ray Dalio video. So guys, let's check this out. Everyone said it sounds like he needs Hex. Like everyone, like I got tagged by like 20 people on DMs and they were like, sounds like he's talking about Hex, but not specifically, but like maybe some of the theories that he was talking about, maybe are covered in this way. So I kind of wanted to talk about this and read it. This is a first time reaction, guys. First time, me and Sam. I haven't watched this video yet, but so many people tagged me that that's a good way to like figure stuff out.
It's been, quite amazing that for 12 years it's accomplished this, but I think it has no relation to anything. Okay. In other words, it moves, it has no relation. It's a tiny thing that gets a disproportionate attention. The value of Bitcoin is less than a third of the value of Microsoft stock. You could go into industries, biotech and many other industries are more interesting than Bitcoin. It's not going to be an effective money. It's not an effective storeholder wealth. It's not an effective medium of exchange. But we are in a world in which money as we know it is in jeopardy, right? We are printing too much, and it's not just the United States, all the reserve currencies, what's going on in Euroland, what's going on in yen. And so in that world, the question is, what is money and how's that going to operate? I think the question over the next number of years is really, what is money, not just as a medium of exchange, but a storehold of wealth?
That sounds like a argument for Bitcoin of sorts.
Bitcoin, or for some digital
Bitcoin? No,
Maybe
I think if you want
currency.
a digital currency, you have to deal something different. I don't think that the stable coins are good because then you're getting a fiat currency again. I think that what would be best is an inflation-linked coin.
Right.
In other words, something where basically you would say, okay, this is going to give me buying power, because every individual wants. What do they want? They want to secure their buying power. If you want to save. Now, if you put it in Bitcoin, it goes like this. Who knows what happens?
Right.
If you put it into something, the closest thing to that is an inflation index bond and so on. But if you created a coin that says, okay, this is buying power that I know I could save in and put my money in over a period of time, and then I can transact in anywhere, I think that would be a good coin. So I think you're going to see probably the development of coins that you haven't seen that probably will end up being attractive, viable coins. I don't think Bitcoin is it.
So I want to go back to the market.
That's
Dude,
interesting.
this dude is sharp as shit. God dang, every time you think when people get old, they start getting stupid, but this dude just gets smarter and smarter and more open-minded. Sam, what did you think about that? And do you know what an inflation, is it a inflation index bond? Do you know what that is?
TIPS is Treasury Inflation Protected Security, I think is what it is. It's TIPS. So basically, a TIPS bond is something that if inflation is 8%, then the return is 8%. If the inflation is 3%, then the return is 3%. And it adjusts with CPI. So if CPI is high, then you get a higher return. If CPI is low,
it's directly on that number. It just stays. Wow, that's super interesting.
And so that's kind of like what he's talking about, because people's like real. So they have a nominal number and then they have a real number. So your real number is like what you can go buy in the store, right? And people's earning capacity is not keeping up with inflation. Remember, people will sell their time. They'll sell their time for something that is completely fake, completely made up, right? They'll go trade 40 hours, 50 hours a week for 60 grand a year. That's like me saying, hey, GRC, I just came out with my own currency. It's called Sam. Will you work for me for 50 hours a week for Sam? Well, what can I do with it? I mean, it's a currency. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it, right? And you're like, well, can I use it anywhere? No, right? That's effectively what people are doing, except for you can use it places. It's called the dollar. It's literally just made up, and people will trade their time for this thing. Now, they're able to just click a button effectively to print $1.7 trillion, 1.7 trillion additional dollars. And yet, the people we're watching who are working W-2 jobs or self-employed and not pushing it are maybe getting a 1% raise or a 3% raise, which means that the amount that they can purchase is going down because you earn this much and inflation is going like this. So in real terms, that means when you go to the store and you buy shit, in real terms, you are poorer, you are worse off. and it's happening at a scale like we
It's happening, like it happened fast enough where like 2 years ago, I literally was looking at my check and literally looking at everything else. And I was like, this ain't going to work. This ain't going to work. And I was doing pretty good. I swear I was making like $1,600 a week. But I was working around the clock. You know how it is when you're basically like, this is as good as it's going to get. This is as good as my human power in this exact moment. And you felt that when you took when you went to school and then you started working for the banks, and then you probably didn't enjoy your experience so much, but you probably realized you would never accomplish your goals at that rate. So it's interesting. This is everyone. It's everyone. Every one of my friends, I know they're not getting 7.6% raises.
Correct.
There's no way.
Correct.
What is the minimum wage these days? Like $20, $12? Remember when we were switching from $8? It was like $8. I remember when it was $8, $9, probably right when I started getting into the workforce. And it was like, it's so weird to think that everyone's getting diluted. Everyone except the rich dudes. Like, where does that stop? When does it change? Because you have to support the people at some point if you want them all to work.
But that shit's going to change, right? So what is it that rich people do, wealthy people do, right? So what if you understand money, that it is made up, all money around the world right now in terms of fiat is just garbage, right? So people will trade the only thing that is limited, their time, to get this made up BS. So what do wealthy people do? They take this made up BS and they go buy real shit. They go buy actual things because they know this is just trash. That's why they don't hold dollars, right? Because they'll go buy real estate. They'll go buy precious metals if that's your thing. They'll go buy businesses that spit off more of this fake garbage that they can buy more shit with, right? Because there's no point in holding fake stuff, right? It's like going to use a testnet. Cool. You have 8 gazillion testnet Ethereum. Great for you, bud. That's like monopoly money. There's no fucking point in it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. So use that to go buy real things. And whether that be something in crypto that you like, whether that be a real physical asset of some sort, whether that be, I personally won't buy any stocks now, but you can buy stocks, you can buy bonds, you can buy precious metals. Like, you convert that into something that's going to retain its buying power versus go down in buying power.
We got Jack Andy right here. Just got a raise, a $15K raise, not even noticeable. A $15,000 raise a few years ago was incredible. And think about it. He can't even notice it after expenses. Everyone is going to be, your human instincts will kick in at some point. And everyone has families, things like this. I have never been so grateful in my entire life to own the house that I'm living in. And when I bought this house, I had no care other than I wanted a place to live that was cool on the corner where my buddies were living, kind of. And now I don't hang out with any of those guys. But seriously, my house is the only right decision other than some crypto investments that I have made. And I am so grateful because I don't even know if I could purchase this house right now. If I had to start, I don't think I could. And it's only been 2 or 3 years. This has been the best investment I have. So guys, make sure your money is working for you in some way, shape, or form. I also have 3 tenants upstairs. So that covers the house basically completely. And this is just an investment almost. And I am so grateful for that. It's opened up so much opportunity for me. And that's just one example. I can totally see why people use real estate a lot. A lot of smart guys use real estate because it has that tangible factor and it appreciates in value just like everything else. It stays with the market for the most part, it seems like.
What are 2 things that people always need? Shelter and food.
Well, shelter and food. And Wawa.
Got a roof over my head, right?
Yeah.
So people, that's why do you think what's his face? Bill Gates is buying up all the farmland in the U.S., right? He's
not so many options sometimes. It's like, okay, where are we at? Oh, what do the people need again? Oh, they need houses still? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's one thing that'll never go out of style, which is incredible until we're in full AI simulation mode. And so I wanted to watch, Sam suggested a video, but before we get into that, I wanted to ask Sam where he thinks we're at in this chart right here, just for fun. So we all know about euphoria, right? We've all been there: thrill, disbelief, optimism, and hope. I got into crypto when Bitcoin was $3,400. A friend of mine called me and he said, "You make money, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you have extra money?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I think you should buy Bitcoin." And I was like, "How do you do it?" And I just went to Coinbase, and I think he told me to send it to a wallet, but I never did. And that was probably the best investment I ever made when no one was talking about crypto. This dude was clearly in the now with the stuff, and he was just doing that as a friend. And so I got to experience all of this. And then I experienced it again because Hex had such a lower liquidity. When Bitcoin was up at the top, Hex was coming right behind it. So luckily I found Richard Hart right in the Bitcoin euphoria stage. And he said Bitcoin top is in. And it wasn't necessarily in, but he was on the right track. He was right on the right track. There was a double top that no one's ever seen before. Crazy double top. So many people probably got wrecked on that double top. And Sam, where do you think we are as far as let's work down the line? Euphoria, complacency, anxiety, denial, panic. I'm going to go ahead and say we're past the panic stage, minimum.
Yep.
Okay. So where do you think we are between capitulation, anger, depression, and then disbelief on the way up?
I think we're in the depression, disbelief area where we're on the come up. Whether that means like we go down a little bit further or we go sideways for a while, kind of like ebbing and flowing a little bit. But I think that we're out of it. Basically, we've had, the bunch of different collapses at this point. Maybe there's more, right? Because I got in right at the point where it was like kind of panic for most people. So after everybody else was like losing money and all this kind of stuff, that's when I was in a panic. And I was like, oh, perfect, great. This is fantastic. The bottom of the market. And then it just keeps going down further and further. And I just keep buying more and more of it. But I think we're coming out of this. I think we're at that point where a bunch of negative stuff has happened, which is great for us, right? You can clean out all the crap, so to speak. This has been washed out. And now we're in that period of time where things are starting to turn around. People are, starting to recognize this, right? FTX is gone. Luna is gone. BlockFi is gone. All these other things are gone and out of the market now. And we're also increasing the number of new people in crypto on a daily basis. So at what point does that wave?
Incredibly knowledgeable.
So I wanted just to pull up this before we got into Ray Dalio. This is the Bitcoin chart. And God, look at that double top. How many people got smoked on that double top?
Not even.
And I just so the 10K is right on this line, right? Remember Richard said a lot of the time he was a little 10K in prey action, 11K and what lower. And once you start seeing white boys get thrown away in prison and a lot of companies getting liquidated to zero, we can assume some of that anger and craziness that was going on maybe is subsiding now. How many people lost money? We watched a video 2022 rewind of Richard Hart and some of the things that he has said. And I think it's fair to say, look at this chart. That we have been a long time now headed down, but we're at this little pumpy poo right here. So for you guys that are new, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but you can know that this general trend will probably move up within the next year. So I think it's a great time to DCA. And Bitcoin's not going to pump like it used to. We've all heard this before. Now there's so much liquidity. You heard a lot of people, a lot of OG Bitcoiners don't even believe in Bitcoin anymore because there's a lot of problems with Bitcoin. And then Ethereum came along. Well, just to show the native crypto asset with the most liquidity, it's fair to say that this is a really good time to be paying attention closely and stacking your cheddar. If at a minimum, having money on the sidelines, because this is when big boys are going to come back to play. Big boys don't play up in here. They sell. So I just wanted to show that to give everyone like a model right off of the psychology of a bubble chart, just to show I think good times are ahead. And if you've stuck through this entire bear market, I've been streaming every day through this bear market. It's been brutal. Try to keep a smile on my face and just be positive a lot of the time, because I know the guys that'll bear the fruits of this are the guys that are paying attention and a little ahead of the curve. You don't want to be the guy buying the next top. You just really don't want to be that guy. And on this show, we just try to keep everyone safe in the Joneses. Not your keys, not your cheese, Sam. We know it. But I want to get straight to the How the Economic Machine Works by Ray Dalio. So we're just going to play this for 33 minutes. And Sam, and please stop if you want to interject at all. My birthday's tomorrow, guys. I'm turning 29 years old. I will be working all day and not doing anything. So if you want to say what's up, I'm still not 30, so I can do whatever I want. That's what I tell myself. There was one guy, not even that successful, but he told me a long time ago, he was like, until you're 30, you could just screw around with business and try to figure stuff out. And I said, okay. I was like, all right, why not? And that helped me have enough confidence to start the YouTube channel and try something different. And now I make a little bit of money per month on YouTube. That's just one stream of revenue that I've added just from having a little bit of freedom, not being so scared, right? I was always scared to make a move. I was always scared but in reality, guys, it's a lot less serious than you think. Try to be the best person you can be and shoot for the stars, especially if you don't have little niños running around. Niños can cause all sorts of trouble. But anyway, I want you to stop me, and anyone that has anything to say in the chat about this, just hashtag question or just throw your question out there and we'll stop the video and talk about it. Ray Dalio has been a uber wealth of knowledge for many, many, many men throughout the years. So I want to listen to this video through. And this video's got 34 million views. What the hell? So for all you Ray Dalio haters, eat it.
Machine works in 30 minutes. How the economic machine works in 30 minutes. The economy works like a simple machine, but many people don't understand it, or they don't agree on how it works, and this has led to a lot of needless economic suffering. I feel a deep sense of responsibility to share my simple but practical economic template. Though it's unconventional, it has helped me to anticipate and to sidestep the global financial crisis, and it has worked well for me for over 30 years. Let's begin. Though the economy might seem complex, it works in a simple mechanical way. It's made up of a few simple parts and a lot of simple transactions that are repeated over and over again a zillion times. These transactions are above all else driven by human nature, and they create three main forces that drive the economy. Number one, productivity growth. Number two, the short-term debt cycle. And number three, the long-term debt cycle. We'll look at these three forces and how laying them on top of each other creates a good template for tracking economic movements and figuring out what's happening now. Let's start with the simplest part of the economy, transactions. An economy is simply the sum of the transactions that make it up, and a transaction is a very simple thing. You make transactions all the time. Every time you buy something, you create a transaction. Each transaction consists of a buyer exchanging money or credit with a seller for goods, services, or financial assets. Credit spends just like money, so adding together the money spent and the amount of credit spent, you can know the total spending. The total amount of spending drives the economy. If you divide the amount spent by the quantity sold, you get the price. And that's it. That's a transaction. It's the building block of the economic machine. All cycles and all forces in an economy are driven by transactions. So if we can understand transactions, we can understand the whole economy. A market consists of all the buyers and all the sellers making transactions for the same thing. For example, there is a wheat market, a car market, a stock market, and markets for millions of things. An economy consists of all of the transactions in all of its markets. If you add up the total spending and the total quantity sold in all of the markets, you have everything you need to know to understand the economy. It's just that simple. People, businesses, banks, and governments all engage in transactions the way I just described, exchanging money and credit for goods, services, and financial assets. The biggest buyer and seller is the government, which consists of two important parts: a central government that collects taxes and spends money, and a central bank, which is different from other buyers and sellers because it controls the amount of money and credit in the economy. It does this by influencing interest rates and printing new money. For these reasons, as we'll see, the central bank is an important player in the flow of credit. I want you to pay attention to credit. Credit is the most important part of the economy and probably the least understood. It's the most important part because it's the biggest and most volatile part. Just like buyers and sellers go to the market to make transactions, so do lenders and borrowers. Lenders usually want to make their money into more money, and borrowers usually want to buy something they can't afford, like a house or a car, or they want to invest in something like starting a business. Credit can help both lenders and borrowers get what they want. Borrowers promise to repay the amount they borrow, called principal, plus an additional amount called interest. When interest rates are high, there is less borrowing because it's expensive. When interest rates are low, borrowing increases because it's cheaper. When borrowers promise to repay and lenders believe them, credit is created. Any two people can agree to create credit out of thin air. That seems simple enough, but credit is tricky because it has different names. As soon as credit is created, it immediately turns into debt. Debt is both an asset to the lender and a liability to the borrower. In the future, when the borrower repays the loan plus interest, the asset and the liability disappear and the transaction is settled. So why is credit so important? Because when a borrower receives credit, he is able to increase his spending. And remember, spending drives the economy. This is because one person's spending is another person's income. Think about it. Every dollar you spend, someone else earns, and every dollar you earn, someone else has spent. So when you spend more, someone else earns more. When someone's income rises, it makes lenders more willing to lend him money because now he's more worthy of credit. A credit-worthy borrower has two things: the ability to repay and collateral. Having a lot of income in relation to his debt gives him the ability to repay. In the event that he can't repay, he has valuable assets to use as collateral that can be sold. This makes lenders feel comfortable lending him money. So increased income allows increased borrowing, which allows increased spending. And since one person's spending is another person's income, this leads to more increased borrowing, and so on. This self-reinforcing pattern leads to economic growth and is why we have cycles. In a transaction, you have to give something in order to get something, and how much you get depends on how much you produce. Over time, we learn, and that accumulated knowledge raises our living standards. We call this productivity growth. Those who are inventive and hardworking raise their productivity and their living standards faster than those who are complacent and lazy. But that isn't necessarily true over the short run. Productivity matters most in the long run, but credit matters most in the short run. This is because productivity growth doesn't fluctuate much, so it's not a big driver of economic swings. Debt is, because it allows us to consume more than we produce when we acquire it, and it forces us to consume less than we produce when we have to pay it back. Debt swings occur in two big cycles. One takes about 5 to 8 years, and the other takes about 75 to 100 years. While most people feel the swings, they typically don't see them as cycles because they see them too up close, day by day, week by week. In this chapter, we're going to step back and look at these three big forces and how they interact to make up our experiences. As mentioned, swings around the line are not due to how much innovation or hard work there is. They're primarily due to how much credit there is. Let's for a second imagine an economy without credit. In this economy, the only way I can increase my spending is to increase my income, which requires me to be more productive and do more work. Increased productivity is the only way for growth. Since my spending is another person's income, The economy grows every time I or anyone else is more productive. If we follow the transactions and play this out, we see a progression like the productivity growth line. But because we borrow, we have cycles. This isn't due to any laws or regulations. It's due to human nature and the way that credit works. Think of borrowing as simply a way of pulling spending forward. In order to buy something you can't afford, you need to spend more than.
He just said something that's very, very, very true. The reason we have cycles is because we have credit. And remember how he said that where there's a big cycle that lasts every 100 to 75 years or something like that? That's the U.S. government printing money. That's the U.S. government printing money. Every dollar is just debt. That's how it's made. Every single U.S. dollar is a form of debt. All of them. So we're in this gigantic cycle, and then we have these shorter cycles, right? Oh, yeah.
No, everyone's a fan favorite of the rooster. Everyone loves the rooster. I love the rooster.
I didn't realize roosters do that like throughout the whole day.
They do it all day?
Yeah, I thought they did it
It's
in
the
the
first
morning.
cry.
What's that?
When is the first rooster roost?
Oh, around 6 a.m.-ish, at least.
That's a nice wake-up call.
Wait, I stopped setting my alarm.
The rooster. It's a Jesus rooster.
And it's way better than an alarm going off. Alarm is so like, ugh.
Dude, I heard setting an alarm is bad.
You heard setting alarm is bad?
Yeah, like if you can figure out how to wake up properly on time, day after day after day, your rhythm is way, way, way more in sync. And like mental health, a lot of different things can happen when you're set up like that. I've heard and read.
I love it. I love it.
I haven't set up an alarm in a long time, man.
I just find it to be better for myself when I don't have an alarm. And it wasn't because of the rooster, but it's inevitable that it is helpful for the rooster. But I just wanted to say that about the credit cycle and the U.S. economy. We're in that giant cycle where the government money printing is going to fail at some point here. And I just wanted to point that out.
Hey, biceps in the chat for the rooster, the new mascot of the channel, the rooster. I love the rooster. I want to meet the rooster.
And you may. To do this, you essentially need to borrow from your future self. In doing so, you create a time in the future that you need to spend less than you make in order to pay it back. It very quickly resembles a cycle. Basically, anytime you borrow, you create a cycle. This is as true for an individual as it is for the economy. This is why understanding credit is so important, because it sets into motion a mechanical, predictable series of events that will happen in the future. This makes credit different from money. Money is what you settle transactions with. When you buy a beer from a bartender with cash, the transaction is settled immediately. But when you buy a beer with credit, it's like starting a bar tab. You're saying you promise to pay in the future. Together, you and the bartender create an asset and a liability. You just created credit out of thin air. It's not until you pay the bar tab later that the asset and the liability disappear, the debt goes away, and the transaction is settled. The reality is that most of what people call money is actually credit. The total amount of credit in the United States is about $50 trillion, and the total amount of money is only about $3 trillion. Remember, in an economy without credit, the only way to increase your spending is to produce more. But in an economy with credit, you can also increase your spending by borrowing. As a result, an economy with credit has more spending and allows incomes to rise faster than productivity over the short run, but not over the long run. Now, don't get me wrong. Credit isn't necessarily something bad that just causes cycles. It's bad when it finances overconsumption that can't be paid back. However, it's good when it efficiently allocates resources and produces income so you can pay back the debt. For example, if you borrow money to buy a big TV, it doesn't generate income for you to pay back the debt. But if you borrow money to, say, buy a tractor, and that tractor lets you harvest more crops and earn more money, then you can pay back your debt and improve your living standards. In an economy with credit, we can follow the transactions and see how credit creates growth. Let me give you an example. Suppose you earn $100,000 a year and have no debt. You are creditworthy enough to borrow $10,000, say on a credit card. So you can spend $110,000 even though you only earn $100,000. Since your spending is another person's income, someone is earning $110,000. The person earning $110,000 with no debt can borrow $11,000, so he can spend $121,000, even though he has only earned $110,000. His spending is another person's income, and by following the transactions, we can begin to see how this process works in a self-reinforcing pattern. But remember, borrowing creates cycles, and if the cycle goes up, it eventually needs to come down. This leads us into the short-term debt cycle. As economic activity increases, we see an expansion, the first phase of the short-term debt cycle. Spending continues to increase and prices start to rise. This happens because the increase in spending is fueled by credit, which can be created instantly out of thin air. When the amount of spending and incomes grow faster than the production of goods, prices rise. When prices rise, we call this inflation. The central bank doesn't want too much inflation because it causes problems. Seeing prices rise, it raises interest rates. With higher interest rates, fewer people can afford to borrow money, and the cost of existing debts rises. Think about this as the monthly payments on your credit card going up. Because people borrow less and have higher debt repayments, they have less money left over to spend. So spending slows. And since one person's spending is another person's income, incomes drop, and so on and so forth. When people spend less, prices go down. We call this deflation. Economic activity decreases, and we have a recession. If the recession becomes too severe and inflation is no longer a problem, the central bank will lower interest rates to cause everything to pick up again. With low interest rates, debt repayments are reduced and borrowing and spending pick up, and we see another expansion. As you can see, the economy works like a machine. In the short-term debt cycle, spending is constrained only by the willingness of lenders and borrowers to provide and receive credit. When credit is easily available, there's an economic expansion. When credit isn't easily available, there's a recession. And note that this cycle is controlled primarily by the central bank. The short-term debt cycle typically lasts 5 to 8 years and happens over and over again for decades. But notice that the bottom and top of each cycle finish with more growth than the previous cycle and with more debt. Why? Because people push it. They have an inclination to borrow and spend more instead of paying back debt. It's human nature. Because of this, over long periods of time, debts rise faster than incomes, creating the long-term debt cycle. Despite people becoming more indebted, lenders even more freely extend credit. Why? Because everyone thinks things are going great. People are just focused on what's been happening lately. And what's been happening lately? Incomes have been rising. Asset values are going up. The stock market roars. It's a boom. It pays to buy goods, services, and financial assets with borrowed money. When people do a lot of that, we call it a bubble. So even though debts have been growing, incomes have been growing nearly as fast to offset them. Let's call the ratio of debt to income the debt burden. So long as incomes continue to rise, the debt burden stays manageable. At the same time, asset values soar. People borrow huge amounts of money to buy assets as investments, causing their prices to rise even higher. People feel wealthy. So even with the accumulation of lots of debt, rising incomes and asset values help borrowers remain creditworthy for a long time. But this obviously cannot continue forever. And it doesn't. Over decades, debt burdens slowly increase, creating larger and larger debt repayments. At some point, debt repayments start growing faster than incomes, forcing people to cut back on their spending. And since one person's spending is another person's income, incomes begin to go down, which makes people less creditworthy, causing borrowing to.
Just 1 second, because I got to pop the frame off. Somebody said drop the link to the video, so I will do that right here, guys. Let me drop this link. And then about $200,000 of buys, basically just not like just came in, but I looked at the scan underneath of it before, and it looks like roughly $200,000 a buy, $100,000 buy went in. And we're seeing some big candles on the hex chart, guys. Just everyone stay safe. Everyone keep your noodle in your head. But good, I'm not saying anything. I'm just letting you guys know. When it comes to an asset that's appreciating, hex tends to do a lot of movement. The liquidity is very pinched, and you can see it very easily because it's all on chain. Very interesting to watch. Thank you guys so much for those updates in the chat, so you can keep my noodle on straight. I got to keep my noodle on straight when it comes to hex, because if there's 3-cent hex, I'm buying. I'm going to the whorehouse, baby. I'm just joking about that, but I'm really excited. We've been waiting a long time for any upwards price action, and we watched it drop from 56 cents to 3. We've all been remaining here and trying to stay in the loop. I appreciate you guys so much for keeping me informed in the chat. Thank you so much.
Go down. Debt repayments continue to rise, which makes spending drop even further, and the cycle reverses itself. This is the long-term debt peak. Debt burdens have simply become too big. For the United States, Europe, and much of the rest of the world, this happened in 2008. It happened for the same reason it happened in Japan in 1989 and in the United States back in 1929. Now the economy begins deleveraging. In a deleveraging, people cut spending, incomes fall, credit disappears, asset prices drop, banks get squeezed, the stock market crashes, social tensions rise, and the whole thing starts to feed on itself the other way. As incomes fall and debt repayments rise, borrowers get squeezed. No longer creditworthy, credit dries up, and borrowers can no longer borrow enough money to make their debt repayments. Scrambling to fill this hole, borrowers are forced to sell assets. The rush to sell assets floods the market at the same time as spending falls. This is when the stock market collapses, the real estate market tanks, and banks get into trouble. As asset prices drop, the value of the collateral borrowers can put up drops. This makes borrowers even less creditworthy. People feel poor. Credit rapidly disappears. Less spending, less income, less wealth, less credit, less borrowing, and so on. It's a vicious cycle. This appears similar to a recession, but the difference here is that interest rates can't be lowered to save the day. In a recession, lowering interest rates works to stimulate borrowing. However, in a deleveraging, lowering interest rates doesn't work because interest rates are already low and soon hit 0%. So the stimulation ends. Interest rates in the United States hit 0% during the deleveraging of the 1930s and again in 2008. The difference between a recession and a deleveraging is that in a deleveraging, borrowers' debt burdens have simply gotten too big and can't be relieved by lowering interest rates. Lenders realize that debts have become too large to ever be fully paid back. Borrowers have lost their ability to repay and their collateral has lost value. They feel crippled by the debt. They don't even want more. Lenders stop lending, borrowers stop borrowing. Think of the economy as being not creditworthy, just like an individual. So what do you do about a deleveraging? The problem is debt burdens are too high and they must come down. There are 4 ways this can happen. 1, people, businesses, and governments cut their spending. 2, debts are reduced through defaults and restructurings. 3, wealth is redistributed from the haves to the have-nots. And finally, 4, the central bank prints new money. These 4 ways have happened in every deleveraging in modern history. Usually, spending is cut first. As we just saw, people, businesses, and even governments tighten their belts and cut their spending so that they can pay down their debt. This is often referred to as austerity. When borrowers stop taking on new debts and start paying down old debts, you might expect the debt burden to decrease. But the opposite happens. Because spending is cut, and one man's spending is another man's income, it causes incomes to fall. They fall faster than debts are repaid, and the debt burden actually gets worse. As we've seen, this cut in spending is deflationary and painful. Businesses are forced to cut costs, which means less jobs and higher unemployment. This leads to the next step. Debts must be reduced. Many borrowers find themselves unable to repay their loans, and a borrower's debts are a lender's assets. When a borrower doesn't repay the bank, people get nervous that the bank won't be able to repay them, so they rush to withdraw their money from the bank. Banks get squeezed, and people, businesses, and banks default on their debts. This severe economic contraction is a depression. A big part of a depression is people discovering much of what they thought was their wealth isn't really there. Let's go back to the bar. When you bought a beer and put it on a bar tab, you promised to repay the bartender. Your promise became an asset of the bartender. But if you break your promise, if you don't pay him back and essentially default on your bar tab, then the asset he has isn't really worth anything. It has basically disappeared. Many lenders don't want their assets to disappear and agree to debt restructuring. Debt restructuring means lenders get paid back less, or get paid back over a longer time frame, or at a lower interest rate than was first agreed. Somehow, a contract is broken in a way that reduces debt. Lenders would rather have a little of something than all of nothing. Even though debt disappears, debt restructuring causes income and asset values to disappear faster, so the debt burden continues to get worse. Like cutting spending, debt reduction is also painful and deflationary. All of this impacts the central government because lower incomes and less employment means the government collects fewer taxes. At the same time, it needs to increase its spending because unemployment has risen. Many of the unemployed have inadequate savings and need financial support from the government. Additionally, governments create stimulus plans and increase their spending to make up for the decrease in the economy. Governments' budget deficits explode in a deleveraging because they spend more than they earn in taxes. This is what's happening when you hear about the budget deficit on the news. To fund their deficits, governments need to either raise taxes or borrow money. But with incomes falling and so many unemployed, who is the money going to come from? The rich. Since governments need more money and since wealth is heavily concentrated in the hands of a small percentage of the people, governments naturally raise taxes on the wealthy, which facilitates a redistribution of wealth in the economy from the haves to the have-nots. The have-nots who are suffering begin to resent the wealthy haves. The wealthy haves, being squeezed by the weak economy, falling asset prices, and higher taxes, begin to resent the have-nots. If the depression continues, social disorder can break out. Not only do tensions rise within countries, they can rise between countries, especially debtor and creditor countries. This situation can lead to political change that can sometimes be extreme. In the 1930s, this led to Hitler coming to power, war in Europe, and depression in the United States. Pressure to do something to end the depression increases. Remember, most of what people thought was money was actually credit. So when credit disappears, people don't have enough money. People are desperate for money, and you remember who can print money? The central bank can. Having already lowered its interest rates to nearly zero, it's forced to print money. Unlike cutting spending, debt reduction, and wealth redistribution, printing money is inflationary and stimulative. Inevitably, the central bank prints new money out of thin air, and uses it to buy financial assets and government bonds. It happened in the United States during the Great Depression, and again in 2008 when the United States Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, printed over $2 trillion. Other central banks around the world that could printed a lot of money too. By buying financial assets with this money, it helps drive up asset prices, which makes people more creditworthy. However, this only helps those who own financial assets. You see, the central bank can print money, but it can only buy financial assets. The central government, on the other hand, can buy goods and services and put money in the hands of the people, but it can't print money. So in order to stimulate the economy, the two must cooperate. By buying government bonds, the central bank essentially lends money to the government, allowing it to run a deficit and increase spending on goods and services through its stimulus programs and unemployment benefits. This increases people's income as well as the government's debt. However, it will lower the economy's total debt burden. This is a very risky time. Policymakers need to balance the four ways that debt burdens come down. The deflationary ways need to balance with the inflationary ways in order to maintain stability. If balanced correctly, there can be a beautiful deleveraging. You see, a deleveraging can be ugly or it can be beautiful. How can a deleveraging be beautiful? Even though a deleveraging is a difficult situation, handling a difficult situation in the best possible way is beautiful. A lot more beautiful than the debt-fueled, unbalanced excesses of the leveraging phase. In a beautiful deleveraging, debts decline relative to income, real economic growth is positive, and inflation isn't a problem. It is achieved by having the right balance. The right balance requires a certain mix of cutting spending, reducing debt, transferring wealth, and printing money so that economic and social stability can be maintained. People ask if printing money will raise inflation. It won't if it offsets falling credit. Remember, spending is what matters. $1 of spending paid for with money has the same effect on price as $1 of spending paid for with credit. By printing money, the central bank can make up for the disappearance of credit with an increase in the amount of money. In order to turn things around, the central bank needs to not only pump up income growth, but get the rate of income growth higher than the rate of interest on the accumulated debt. So what do I mean by that? Basically, income needs to grow faster than debt grows. For example, let's assume that a country going through a deleveraging has a debt-to-income ratio of 100%. That means that the amount of debt it has is the same as the amount of income the entire country makes in a year. Now think about the interest rate on that debt. Let's say it's 2%. If debt is growing at 2% because of that interest rate, and income is only growing at around 1%, you will never reduce the debt burden. You need to print enough money to get the rate of income growth above the rate of interest. However, printing money could easily be abused because it's so easy to do and people prefer it to the alternatives. The key is to avoid printing too much money and causing unacceptably high inflation the way Germany did during its deleveraging in the 1920s. If policymakers achieve the right balance, a deleveraging isn't so dramatic. Growth is slow, but debt burdens go down. That's a beautiful deleveraging. When incomes begin to rise, borrowers begin to appear more creditworthy. And when borrowers appear more creditworthy, lenders begin to lend money again. Debt burdens finally begin to fall. Able to borrow money, people can spend more. Eventually, the economy begins to grow again, leading to the reflation phase of the long-term debt cycle. Though the deleveraging process can be horrible if handled badly, if handled well, it will eventually fix the problem. It takes roughly a decade or more for debt burdens to fall and economic activity to get back to normal, hence the term lost decade. In closing, of course, the economy is a little bit more complicated than this template suggests. However, laying the short-term debt cycle on top of the long-term debt cycle, and then laying both of them on top of the productivity growth line, gives a reasonably good template for seeing where we've been, where we are now, and where we're probably headed. So, in summary, there are 3 rules of thumb that I'd like you to take away from this. First, don't have debt rise faster than income, because your debt burdens will eventually crush you. Second, don't have income rise faster than productivity, because you'll eventually become uncompetitive. And third, do all that you can to raise your productivity, because in the long run, that's what matters most. This is simple advice for you, and it's simple advice for policymakers. You might be surprised, but most people, including most policymakers, don't pay enough attention to this. This template has worked for me, and I hope it will work for you. Thank you.
This video and a lot of Ray Dalio's videos, I feel like people are going to learn a lot more by his videos than they will in school. And they tend to be very well laid out. And he tends to not be biased in one direction or the other direction. So I like those videos. Hopefully you guys enjoyed them. If you did, let us know. Leave us a like. We're going to take us out of here.
Wait one sec before we go. Tomorrow, Internet Money, my birthday here. Let me share this. My birthday, Internet Money collab. Look at that banner. My God, I keep adding faces to the banner. I'm losing space. Hold on one sec. Damn it. Did it not go? Where did it go? Go. Where did it go? Never mind, guys. Go to my Twitter, and I posted the Internet Money video. And if you go to my YouTube, you can see it pending already. So Internet Money KG coming on tomorrow, guys. We're going to have a good show. He says he has updates for me, and he asked me if he could come on the show. I said, absolutely. Let's get it going. More educational content, more bringing it back to basics, guys. We got to learn these basics again. The FOMO, the craziness, all the fighting. We need to get back to the basics so we can keep everyone safe and secure. Make sure you're working on your mission, guys. Whatever that mission is, get a notebook, write down your mission. Sam reminds me almost every single day to be taking notes on my feelings, on my goals, on everything. And I suggest you do the same. Crypto in the Morning Live every single day. Rooster! All right, guys, bye.
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stay. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way.
D5 Pro.
Crypto in the morning.